A vote is like a rifle. Its usefulness depends upon the character of the user. Theodore Roosevelt. You can turn on Fox News almost any day and see some fictional story about voter fraud, the whole purpose of which is to limit voting by the poor, the elderly, college students, and minorities. That is Cenk Uygur. When it comes to voting rights, Democrats push voter protection while Republicans shout voter fraud in a crowded polling place. Democrats think anyone who can vote should vote. Republicans think everyone who should vote can vote. Christine Pelosi. And, my friends, this is AllMinucOne. Welcome. My name is Bill. So, guys, I haven't done a long form video like this in a while. Forgive me for that. I had some travels. I've not been feeling well the last couple of days. And, trying to get my head around this election stuff, seeing what's been going on. I've been trying to produce content, but it is what it is. I'm not perfect. I have other responsibilities. If I was doing this full-time, it would be great. But like I said, I have other things to get to. But I do want to look at these quotes real quick, because this is really what's going on today, right? We have this voter impropriety, this potential voter fraud, this counting fraud, or whatever else you might want to call it. We have discrepancies. Is this fake? No. Voter fraud, impropriety, whatever, rigged ballots, all that has always existed. It has a long history in both parties. It has a very long, extensive, and documented history within the Democratic Party. And let me remind you, this is the same party that had all of the ballot taxes, the poll taxes. They had the Jim Crow. They had all of the voter suppression. And you're going to try to explain to me that they changed? No, they didn't change so much as they decided, oh, you know what we're going to do? We're gonna rig it now. We're gonna allow whomever to vote, plus people that don't even aren't even willing to vote or wanting to vote. Dead people, people who are senile, people who didn't ask for a ballot or who didn't want to vote because, as a maybe reasonable person, they decide, hey, I really shouldn't have a say in this because I know nothing about it. And here, Theodore Roosevelt says very specifically, it depends upon the character of the user, the vote, like shooting a rifle. And who is the user? It's not always the individual citizen. These quotes are interesting because Cenk Uygur is a progressive with just a ton of hyperbole, constantly, all the time, on his network, the Young Turks, which is kind of a gross name considering the Young Turks was a group that executed the Armenian genocide. But he says here that they're always talking about voter fraud, and that's to limit the voting by the poor, the elderly, and college students and minorities. All that people who are right-leaning, whether they be independent or libertarian or within the Republican Party, all we want is proof that votes are secure, that who is voting is the one who is voting. And considering that voter fraud does exist, it's documented, I don't think it's much to ask. In fact, the real question is why would you not want it? Well, trying to say the poor, the elderly, college students, and minorities aren't ones who are able to vote because you require ID or something like that, that's ridiculous. I mean, voting's not hard, folks. I've been doing it since I think I was 19. It's the first time I was able to vote. Not that hard. Pretty difficult. And I skipped a couple presidential elections, at least marking off the president. I did vote down ballot. Otherwise, I missed the last presidential election, not this past one, just completely because I was just so frustrated with things. And I hadn't kept up enough with my local elections, with my local politicians. But, that's that idea that I don't think I should vote if I'm not aware. That's called being a responsible citizen. And then here, Christine Pelosi, it says, Democrats think anyone who can vote should vote. Anyone? Like, does that mean the dead? Does that mean people with dementia? Does that mean 16-year-olds, 8-year-olds? I mean, you think that 8-year-olds can transition into another sexual category before they've even hit puberty. So, what do you mean by anyone? Republicans think everyone who should vote can vote. Yeah. If you should vote, that is, if you're 18 or older, if you're educated on the issues, if you have your brain together. Now, legally, anyone who's over 18 technically can vote as long as they're not a felon. But again, Democrats want felons to vote. Well, sorry, folks, but in the tradition of the Constitution, you may lose your rights. So let's get into some meat and potatoes of things. Right now, there's this article going around, a lot of people from YouTube talking about, from the BBC, talking about signs of voter rigging. Now, this was in Africa. One of the one of the counters to the narrative of this that I saw online was, well, you can't, that's in Africa, that doesn't count in the US. You can't compare the same. They're not the same thing. You can't compare the two. Well, yeah, you absolutely can. And I'm going to show you evidence of voter fraud and propriety here, not just recently, but in the last election, that is the midterms, and prior to that. So let's not pretend that this is a false ideal, that it barely or rarely happens. And what is caught, by the way, is what is caught. It's not what flies under the radar. It's not what gets by that people miss that is the issue. We could very well suggest that voter fraud was in place during the 2000 election, during the Gore versus Bush, or Bush v. Gore, that became a Supreme Court case that is very much important to today's situation. So just to burn through this real quick. Too many votes. Watch the turnout figures. They can be a big giveaway. You never get a 98 or 99% turnout in an honest election. You just don't. Even, see, it talks about in Australia where they're forced to vote, you still only get 90 to 95%. Interesting, because I have data here. More than 90% of eligible residents have cast ballots. This is Billy Penn. This is up in PA, Philadelphia. And it's a recent article. Then I have 90% voter turnout in Wisconsin, explained as 7 Milwaukee districts report higher than 100%. Now, I wasn't sure about this site because it's no Q report, and I have no idea if that's to do with the whole Q thing or not. But they do have their source linked, and we can just go right there. And this is from the Milwaukee City Wire. Says, analysis, 5 Milwaukee wards report 89% turnout in 2020 election vote. And it goes over some of the data here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, folks, because this stuff is just everywhere. But I just wanted to bring that up. I just wanted to show, like, okay, so that's suspect. High turnout in specific areas. Well, we know that the areas where the turnout was all in very specific cities and contested districts that were essentially thought to be swing states. Why would one particular area or one individual polling station have a 90% turnout while most other areas register less than 70%? Well, that happened this past election, folks. Large numbers of invalid votes. Now, I don't know about the invalid votes because we haven't seen that yet. Keep an eye on the number of votes excluded as invalid. Even in countries with low literacy rates, this isn't normally above 5%. Well, according to Chink's argument here, the poor, the elderly, college students, and the minorities, that's not true. Again, this is a BBC article, folks. This is from England, from Britain, from the UK. More votes than the ballot papers issued. Well, we've had some bit of that, maybe, but probably not. Mostly just the widespread ballots being sent out. We don't know how many of those can be invalidated based on analysis, based on vetting them and looking further into them. We know that people are on the rolls. This happens every election season that were deceased, or in one case particularly, supposedly someone in the 1820s or something that was born in the 1820s voted, or at least was on the rolls. So I don't mean to mislead you. There's so much going on. It's hard to gain everything. If you look at certain things that they get fact checked and they say that they're wrong or they're misrepresented or da because the left wants to, and the left-wing media wants to portray this idea that votes are totally illegitimate no matter what, and America voted in Joe Biden, which I have a hard time, really hard time believing. But I do understand the hate Trump vote. Delayed announcing results. Well, this happens. But we had that exactly. And that was pretty much it. Now I want to go over here. This is something that Judicial Watch had put up. It said, U.S. elections, are we ready for evidence? And this was November 9th, so just yesterday. So again, I'm not going to go through the entire article. I'm just going to kind of skim through here. There's all kinds of stuff out by all kinds of creators, and you guys can go check them out. I'm going to cover a few of them very briefly here in a minute. But this here, it says, according to Statista, only 29% of adults in the U.S. felt the news media was trustworthy. It was a statistic gathered in February 2020. Before the recent months, and the political polarization has intensified. Validation of voter IDs. It says, can trust in systems process ever be restored in such an atmosphere of unhealthy skepticism and mutual suspicion? Well, I think if we had voter IDs, it wouldn't be an issue. And this is just like an easy thing to take care of. The states do have a right to dictate how they want to vote. But I think on a federal level, we could maybe add a constitutional amendment that suggests that for federal elections, the states must use a identification process. I mean, I live in West Virginia. I have a federal ID that everyone's supposed to be switching to. I don't agree with that because I don't think it's constitutionally valid. But it is what it is, and I have one because West Virginia was one of the early states to adopt it. Here it says 3 weeks before Election Day, conservative watchdog Judicial Watch alleges that 352 U.S. counties and 29 states had registered 1.8 million more voters than eligible voting age citizens. It cited states like Arizona, Alaska, Florida, Georgia, Maine, Michigan, Nebraska, Nevada, and Texas, which produced registrations exceeding 100%. Now, if you go on Snopes right now, I don't have this pulled up, but I did see this. Snopes will come up. In fact, if you Google this exactly, if you have Snopes pulled up, they'll say basically not that it's false, but it can't be confirmed. It's just simple stuff like that that left-wing sites do. And here it talks about building using blockchain to keep votes from essentially being changed, deterred, whatever. I think you should have a voter receipt. If you want anonymity in your vote, you can still have that. Have a receipt. You can go back, look at your vote, punch in the numbers, scan it, whatever, using an app maybe within your state. See if your vote counted the way that you said it counted. And if it didn't, then you can file a complaint and have it changed perhaps. But we don't have any of these things. We leave this up in the year 2020. We leave these things up to people in secret rooms. And don't get me wrong, I get it's supposed to be non-biased, but that is another issue that we're having right now with the observers being kicked out. And guess what, folks? Despite what you may hear, it is very, very likely that all of those votes that the observers were not allowed to watch will be kicked out. That means that even though some of them may have been fake votes, some of them may have been, rigged ballots or something, that there will be honest voters within that simply do not get a chance to vote because of the impropriety of those counting them. Why would you want to leave a system that disenfranchises you in the hands of other people, or that may enfranchise you or disenfranchise you depending on who it is? We've seen pictures of people crumbling up things. They're vote watchers that were given a finger to votes and getting mad. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's something else. Maybe the person's just frustrated. Maybe they threw it away. They got mad because it was an invalid vote, and they were sick of seeing that. I'm not trying to make the case that it's all Democratic cheating. There might be a lot of reasons for that. It seems like a tedious thing to do to count a bunch of votes. All I'm saying is why can't we figure out a better way to take care of things, a quicker way, in a way that is very, very secure? And why are the Democrats making excuses like this by limiting the poor, the elderly, college students, and minorities? I guess none of those people drive or have IDs or drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes or go into bars or do anything that requires an ID. I mean, come on, man. And yeah, anyone who can vote should vote. Who should vote can vote. Yeah. Yeah, that to me, that's telling to the mind, to the mindset. Anyways, this article goes on. This is from Digital Insights for Business Leaders, but I believe Judicial Watch is the one that put this up, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, here's the National Pulse. Now, again, I'm not going to read this whole article. It's just something for you all to check out if you want. But you've probably seen this claim, like flipping a coin and getting heads 100 times. Statistic buffs scrutinize Biden victory numbers. And this goes through. This has some scribed articles that were left up here, some of the anomalies. It goes through some more with information. You get some numbers, discrepancies. One of the big discrepancies that we know is that Biden actually got more votes than Clinton or Obama. There's just no freaking way, folks, unless there were just ballots that were filled out by folks who either, I would suggest, were elderly and could not comprehend who they were going to vote for, or and mind you, I have folks in my family that have gone through this. Someone particularly my mother cares for that was asking her, needed help to fill out her ballot, and my mom is not the kind of person to just do it for her, so decided to be very judicious about it. In any case, but there is some evidence that there are people going around who, got patients, say, in a nursing home, or people who were demented and voted for them, or just collected up the ballots. Or, Tim Pool's brought up, mom said to the kids that still live at home in their early 20s or something, hey, you're going to vote, let's all vote. I mean, I don't think that's the real thing that put all the numbers over, but it will make voter participation higher. The numbers we saw indicates rigging to me, especially with some of the other telltale signs. But anyways, this goes on and on. So there is some data you can look at. This was an important one, though, that I really wanted to get to. And this is the Biden only. Per data provided by the state of Pennsylvania, an exorbitant number of individuals cast ballots only voting for the president. Analysis revealed this phenomenon occurred exponentially more with Biden voters. Another way to track down fraudulent votes is to look closely at how many of the votes did little or no downtick voting. When manufacturer votes, it is too time consuming to vote for other office holders, the report notes. And that makes sense. Continued statistical analysis shows wild numbers of people who voted only for Joe Biden and didn't further vote down the ticket. And to me, I would say every single one of these ballots is invalid, which would certainly overturn many of these states. Like, there's almost no way someone was just like, I'm going to vote Joe Biden and no one else. One of the other big anomalies, which we'll cover here, is, of course, that the House went up. We didn't really lose in the Senate. Like, this whole thing is crazy. People voted Republican, but then voted Biden. Interesting. And I don't think people voting for Republicans were interested in more lockdowns that Biden will eventually bring upon us here. In fact, I would suggest that if Biden does finally get the nomination, and by the way, folks, he is not nominated yet. Whatever the media is saying, he is not nominated yet. This is not how this happens. In fact, the state legislature has to essentially approve of the ballot counts and their delegation and say that this is what it is. It's not been certified yet. It hasn't happened. And I think this is likely to turn out in court. And if worse comes to worse, it'll come down to the state delegates, in which Trump will probably win. If that's the case, could be wrong about that. But look, for months, and I will show you articles, for months people were warning about this. We knew this was going to happen. And now the media is pretending like, oh, this is just imaginary. It's all in your mind. Conspiracy theorists. No, not at all. So it says, I have people going through all the anomalies. And this is the thing, is people will look at this, there will be cases brought up, as well as the impropriety of the people counting the ballots. And that's the big one. Trump top ticket. Negative, negative, negative. And here it's positive, and then here negative, or maybe it's supposed to be negative there. Negative values probably means there was a crossover, and they probably voted for Trump and a Democratic lower. Again, guys, it's suspect. I'll play this real quick.
And as the state of Georgia remains front and center of the ongoing battle over the election, and many voters are wondering if their vote was properly tallied, a New Jersey woman who recently moved from Georgia and received a troubling phone call asking for her information about her ballot. One America's Christina Bobb has more from Washington.
Can residents of the swing states rest assured that their votes were properly counted? Apparently not in New Jersey, but only recently, back in April, she called and moved out of the state. On November 5th, 2 days after the election, she received a call from a woman from Georgia asking her if she voted. The woman claimed to have a list of Georgia voters, and she was simply confirming if they'd used their ballot.
So they interview this woman here. This is One American News Network. You go find it. This was just released the other day. It says Georgia voters get suspicious phone calls. This woman moved to New Jersey. She told Georgia that she was moving to take her off the voter registration. She still got a phone call, and she thought that even though it was after the election, it was too rigged. The ballots, remember, Georgia is still being contested right now, as well as Arizona and Pennsylvania and most of the states that, whatever. And that's the other fishy thing, folks, is that obviously the mainstream media has called a bunch of states that they weren't even close. There were other states that were far more close that they couldn't have called, or they could have called for Trump and they wouldn't. This is a big psyop. This is a big brainwashing scheme and meant to gaslight you. So here is a local news network from Buffalo.
Here in Western New York, a postal employee from the city of Buffalo is now facing federal charges of hiding and not delivering mail. That includes some absentee ballots found in his car. This is according to federal agents. Channel 2's Ron Plants has more.
According to a federal criminal complaint and the U.S. Attorney's Office, this incident was first uncovered here at the Peace Bridge on the night of Election Day, this past Tuesday, when customs agents say a Chevrolet sedan was pulled over for a standard inspection while re-entering the U.S. Agents say they found a postal worker's uniform, an ID badge, along with a bin marked with a Postal Service logo containing 813 pieces of mail in the trunk of the car. They say the bin contained 3 absentee ballots mailed from the Erie County Board of Elections to addresses in Buffalo. That driver, identified as 27-year-old Brandon Wilson of Buffalo, is seen on a Facebook page referring to his work as a letter carrier and showing him with the identified vehicle in the complaint and with a posting at 9:30 a.m. on Election Day urging people to vote. Just 10 hours later, he was arrested at the Peace Bridge. According to agents, Wilson originally told them the mail belonged to him and his mother, but when they confronted him about the various intended recipients and addresses, he could not account for them and said he had intended to deliver the mail.
Now, this is WGRZ-TV, so this is an NBC2 affiliate in Buffalo. Now, obviously, it says they only had a few ballots. We knew that missing ballots had been happening for a long time now. There are news stories all over the place, and I'll have all those brought up. This guy, I have no idea what he was doing, but he was driving over to Canada and back, interestingly enough. Now, maybe he was trying to harvest certain types of mail. It doesn't get into it. I didn't follow up on the story, but just be aware, when they're saying there's no voter fraud or nothing, there's no evidence of that, there are evidences. Even if this wasn't direct, if this guy was stealing mail for other reasons, it doesn't matter.
Federal prosecutors say a West Seneca postal worker could have interfered with the election by stealing absentee ballots and other mail. He's now charged with delay or destruction of mail. 7 Eyewitness News reporter Hannah Bueller shows us what led to the arrest and what authorities say they found in the man's car.
It was 7:30 p.m. on election night when Customs and Border Protection officers say they stopped a U.S. postal worker near the Peace Bridge after getting off the 190 at the wrong exit. Customs and Border Protection officers did a sweep of his personal car. It was there investigators say they opened the trunk of Brandon Wilson's vehicle and found a postal carrier box with 3 absentee ballots sent to 2 Buffalo addresses from the Erie County Board of Elections, 106 political mailings, 220 first-class mailings, and 484 standard mailings. That's a total of 813 mail pieces that prosecutors say did not belong to Wilson. The first-class letter mailings were supposed to go to zip codes in the Buffalo-Cheektowaga border, with the majority going to 14215. In the criminal complaint, prosecutors say Wilson, who is from West Seneca, initially told officers the mailings were for him and his mother, but then said in September he estimated he placed mail from his delivery routes into his personal vehicle trunk on more than 4 occasions. Wilson.
And why? The question is why. Look, folks, the Postal Service came out pro-Biden. There was obviously a big scam trying to say that the Trump administration was trying to defund the post office. Anyone in the know knows that the post office has been in bad shape for a long time, but it's a cushy job. It's a good job. That guy's just stealing the mail and doing whatever. I don't know why. Here's another little story.
After a postal worker was caught on camera dumping mail. Look at these images showing a mailman throwing mail into a popular dump site. 41 Action News reporter Charlie Keegan went to that site at 45th and Garfield and met with the man in charge of investigating dumping crimes.
No, this is unrelated. This is January 26, 2018, but it goes to show you that the mail is easily tampered with, and this is the problem with mail-in voting. So here.
While the vote counting in the undecided states is in the spotlight, hundreds of people here in North Florida are learning their votes will not be counted, period. Some of them were notified by election officials and were given a chance to come in and fix a problem with their ballots. News4JAX reporter Jim Piggott breaks down how many votes wound up being rejected.
So basically everything's done here. Let me show you what's happening at the election center. See these pink envelopes back here? Those were the provisional ballots, some that were questionable at the poll site. Well, these have all been accepted, and what they're doing now is entering into the computer that that voter had a legitimate vote, and they're getting credit. Now, there were some that weren't accepted, and now we're gathering the numbers on those to find out exactly whose vote counted and whose didn't.
Every voter I spoke to this year wanted to make sure their vote counted, and that's why they either voted in person or dropped off a mail ballot. But despite that, there were still problems. In Duval County, 258 mail ballots were rejected, not counted, because signatures just didn't match.
We notified a little over 1,000 that had signature issues. I think we got back about 700.
Also, 170 votes.
Now, I want you to understand that these ballots are in Jacksonville, Florida, and this is how things should have happened in Pennsylvania and did not.
Vote by mail ballots were rejected because they arrived at the office too late. And at the polls, 1,173 votes weren't accepted. Those voters filled out a provisional ballot, which had to be reviewed by the canvassing board. Apparently, there was one main problem.
Well, if you're not registered, you're not registered. Most of the ones that were rejected were not registered. The other problems were they didn't go to the right precinct.
So, as you're listening to this, I want to replay that. I want to replay the numbers there. It was over 1,000 votes that they had issues with, and many of them weren't registered and went to the wrong precinct. Is that because of this thing right here that Cenk Uygur talks about? That they're poor and elderly and college students and minorities, therefore they must be idiots? I don't think so. I don't think that that is the issue at all.
The other problems were they didn't go to the right precinct. And, well, if you're not registered.
Apparently, there was one main problem.
Well, if you're not registered, you're not registered. Most of the ones that were rejected were not registered. The other problems were they didn't go to the right precinct. And so those are just out of hand. There's nothing you can do about that.
In St. Johns County, 132 vote-by-mail ballots were rejected. Signatures there were the main problem. And 122 provisional ballots from the polls were not accepted. Clay County had 258 vote-by-mail ballots rejected and only 4 ballots from the polls not accepted.
Now, I'm playing this for you to understand that there are rules to voting, and these votes get rejected. Now, if there are no rules to voting, then any vote counts regardless. And how in the world are we supposed to decide that that is legitimate? Here's the Sharpie issue, which I don't want to spend much time on.
A new development tonight in the ongoing argument over whether the use of a Sharpie led to ballots being thrown out.
A conservative legal group filing a lawsuit against Maricopa County over the felt tip pens. ABC.
So supposedly you weren't supposed to use them. Maybe you could, maybe didn't mess them up, whatever. Maricopa County, Arizona was one of the issues. And this election, like, here we are on the 10th. This happened on the 3rd. It's been 7 days, and what do we got? We got nothing. We got the media saying Biden won, and most likely not. He may end up being proven the victor after all this impropriety, but for sure, there was fraud, there was impropriety, there were issues. That last video I showed you in Florida did the right things. Here's another one. $134 counts of election fraud. Nope, I don't know where my volume is on this. Well, it doesn't say there, but it says A.G. Paxton, Limestone County social worker, charged with 134 felony counts involving election fraud. That is November 6, 2020. Here it says hundreds of Americans were denied the right to vote. Now, for some reason, my videos don't want to play sound all of a sudden, folks. How about this one?
Do the work yourself. This spreadsheet shows...
All right, so this is Academic Agent. I'm not going to play all of his work. Go over to his channel. Go subscribe. He's got a great channel if you like economics and other stuff. And, you know, smart British guy who who is a very good, I would say, political analyst who can present you with classical liberal ideas.
Those 9 key states. I have taken total registered voters from the latest numbers from each state's electoral commission website. This took some time to find, not least because of the bewildering array of fact-checking articles that dominate search results, often making it very hard to find the data itself. In any case, I find it strange that such information is not readily collated by state and widely available, but it appears not to exist. In fact, the #1 search result will throw up this page, and some people have shared memes containing the data.
Now, I brought this up with the CDC reporting. Guys, there's only one reason to do this, and this is to keep you in the dark. There's no other reason to do this kind of thing. I'm not saying just because of this election. I mean any election or anything where government information isn't available. It's called transparency, right? We all know what transparency is. Biden supposedly is going to be super transparent while Trump hasn't been, supposedly. I think Trump's been extremely transparent. I mean, the guy says all kinds of stuff, right? That's the problem people have with him. Versus Biden, who just lies constantly. He's been a liar since, well, probably forever, but at least since the 80s that we know of, as he plagiarized a British politician for him to run for president. And he also said he was the top of his class in college and law school and all this other stuff. I mean, Biden's been known to be a liar forever, guys. He was essentially picked as Obama's candidate simply because he was kind of a dunce, but he was established, right? So that gives him some cred. Biden's always been a dunce. The only thing he's ever done was the 1994 crime bill, and he helped work on the assault weapons ban. The only things that he's really done. I just I just don't understand why people trust in their politicians, their institutions, and their governments when they obviously do things. And trust me, I know a lot of it is just gross incompetence, but they obviously do things that are completely untransparent and completely dishonest.
That you'll find if you click through on that page. Articles point out. So I took special pains to source the real numbers. So all of the numbers you see in this column are the total active registered voters as of the day of the election. In the next two columns.
Now here, the two things that he's going to point out. Minnesota, the turnout changed by 14.5%. That's huge. And then here in Pennsylvania, the turnout 14.6%. And then Wisconsin. That is quite strange considering, I mean, here in North Carolina, that's even a jump, but considering the lack of enthusiasm.
I have
Biden.
Total votes cast for Donald Trump and Joe Biden, respectively. I have calculated turnout by dividing total votes by total registrations and then multiplying by 100. Note that since I have not included third-party votes, these turnouts will be ever so slightly off by, 0.1 or 0.2 of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin.
Now, these are all, of course, the states that are in contest.
In 4 other states, Arizona, Florida, Michigan, and North Carolina, turnout increased between 1.6 and 6%. In Nevada and Ohio, turnout actually fell. But in Minnesota and Pennsylvania, turnout was up by a massive 14.5%, and in Wisconsin, 20%. I find this curious. Why would turnout be up so much in these states only? And this is a question for the likes of Nate Silver to ponder, but I find it odd to say the least.
So guys, go watch the rest of his video, but, again, just trying to cover stuff briefly, just going through. Like, I got some Crowder here real quick.
Now let's go through, again, some of the dead people voting. Oh, no, wait, sorry. Before that, Wisconsin. And then, Bill, you can sound off at any point.
Yep.
The voting stopped in the middle of the night. And they may have illegally altered thousands of ballots. And the reason for this, let me bring this up here from a local news, Wisconsin clerk, who said that in Wisconsin, the law states that there has to be a witness to sign the ballot.
Yeah.
And the witness actually needs to sign it with their address.
Ah, okay.
Not only did that not happen, but it may have just been the poll volunteer. Go, let me sign that.
Yeah.
And pop it right in. So again, we don't know. The issue that we're running into here is there have been so many flagrant disregarding of norms and expectations,
state law,
and even state or sometimes federal laws as it relates to elections, that we couldn't possibly know the actual results in places where margins are razor thin. Yeah. What were you about to say?
In Wisconsin.
Everyone can see we just measured that 16 feet. 16? Gerald, do not lie or you will be fired.
I can't see. The last word is...
Close your eyes.
Not even
close
close.
your eyes. Do me a favor. Close your eyes.
See what we got here.
Was the one who actually thought he lost, and then he won.
The computer glitch.
That's like a snow day for a politician.
Yeah, it's a great surprise.
You're expecting a loss. Trump, by most estimates, this go around. They were one of the counties with a glitch that prevented Dane voting for. There's her ballot status received. There's her obituary. Let's go to William.
This is really what I want to get to. This data is everywhere, folks. So you can obviously find it. I just want to include it because it's just comprehensive of every little tiny thing that could potentially go wrong to change this election. And I'm not doing this to sit here and go, oh, I'm going to be a sore loser. It has nothing to do with that, whether I supported Trump or not. We, as Americans, need to be able to trust our elections. This is fundamental. and important if we are going to have a constitutional republic. Now, I know the Democrats want a full democracy, a full mob rule. All the lefties, they're nuts. You don't want that. I'm sure you might be aware, but smart people don't outnumber stupid people. And stupid people will make you do stupid things and bring you down to their level. And that's what democracy will be. It'll be mob rule, because that's what democracy is. And if you read the writings of the founders, you know they never intended us to be a democracy, that they despised it. And it's why they were so careful to put so many checks and balances in, to protect the majority from the minority, and to protect the minority from the majority. And so that we could have some sort of ebb and flow and balance all the time and not have things change too much.
Bradley in Michigan. Born in 1902, died in 1984. Let's bring up the image. There's his ballot received.
Wow.
Let's bring up Donald Wright in Michigan. Born in 1931, he too voted, despite also being dead.
Now again, the media will sit here and say, there is no evidence. None. No evidence. No evidence. There's evidence abounding. And I'm not sitting here doing the hard work on this either. Other people have done it. Fleckus Talks apparently has gone through this. Many of independent YouTubers, creators, news outlets, whatever. Even, if I'm not mistaken, who is not a fan of Trump, even Glenn Greenwald has had issue with this election.
Now, this is important because this is just Michigan.
He died in 51.
There's a list of voters that I think we can make available at loudwithcredit.com who were all born before 1920, meaning they were over 100 years old.
ago.
Yeah.
And less than 1% of the American population is over 100. Your chances of making it to over 100, I believe, are 1 in like 20,000.
Yeah.
So we don't know if all of these people are dead. These are just the ones that we found going in at random in a list of over 3,500 people who are over the age of.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And then you come to this kind of concept right here. 25% of Americans believe voter fraud is a major problem. It's not. And then this was in September 16th. I'm really disappointed with Forbes, by the way. I probably say this every time I bring up a Forbes article. I've been in lectures, feet away from Steve Forbes, and I felt like asking, what is wrong with your paper? What has happened to it? This was a few years back, but because they outsource so much of it anymore. And so it's gotten really, really left. And it's not about business so much as it is just, left-wing activists getting in because they let it be outsourced. But it says 43% of Republicans say fraud presents a major problem within mail-in voting. From Pew Research poll indicating that President Trump's inaccurate attacks on mail-in ballots have been persuaded some voters, despite extensive evidence of fraud, is rare. No, it's not rare. Extensive prosecution of fraud is rare. 5 states face federal lawsuit over inaccurate voter registrations. Real Clear Politics right here. This is January 2020. What? In 378 U.S. counties, voter registration exceeds 100% of adult population, meaning there were more voters registered on file than the total voting age population, according to new analysis by a conservative watchdog group, Judicial Watch. Well, thank God for them. That's just one article. Go read it yourself. This is from Town Hall. USPS whistleblower in Michigan claims higher ups were engaging in voter fraud. Update investigation launched. This was just this past week, November 4th. This guy is now signing a sworn statement, an affidavit, which is, by the way, folks, legal evidence. So when the media says there's no evidence, his sworn statement, and there's been several of these, by the way, in several states, his sworn statement alone is legal evidence. That is evidence in the court of law. I know. I used to work in law enforcement. Trust me. Your word is evidence. Confessions of voter fraud. I was a master at fixing mail-in ballots. This is from the New York Post, August 29, 2020. This was going around forever, and it talks about this guy. It says he did it for years. He says, I know exactly how to do it. Voter fraud, mail-in votes is the way to go. This is from the American Spectator. Voter fraud, harvesting granny. For an urban Democrat in cities like Philadelphia, universal mail-in voting is a can't-lose proposition. October 20th, 2020. So I actually want to scroll down here to the bottom. It says, President Trump and others raised the warning of potential voter fraud posed by the widespread use of universal, unrequested mail-in ballots. Not the same as an absentee ballot. You have to ask for an absentee ballot. It says, in response, the Democrats insisted that there is no evidence supporting Trump's claim. But if history and common sense are any guides, mail-in ballots will make it easier for Democrats to harvest the votes of those living or dead who have no role in casting them. The term political arts for these practice when used in nursing homes is granny harvesting. I brought this up earlier. I just wanted to show you. This isn't out of nowhere. This isn't out of my crazy mind. The confused or mentally disabled residents need only sign their names to the ballot, and others will fill in the rest. As illegal, outrageous, and damaging to democracy as this scam may be, the use of mail-in ballots will be far more humane and efficient way to steal the election than transporting busloads of feeble and confused seniors from the nursing home to polling places and escort them to the voting booth so they can vote right away. It also eliminates the need to abandon the occasional old-timers who won't play ball, after all. As I can tell you from personal experience, an abandoned, desperate, and sobbing white-haired granny in a wheelchair is a bad look for the party of compassion. So will the Democrats try to steal the 2020 election by harvesting mail-in ballots? Why wouldn't they? If indeed the past is prologue, then we should not expect the party whose operative corrupted our intelligence agencies to spy on candidate Trump, attempted to frame President Trump for non-existent collusion with Russia, and impeach him without a scantily of justification, to hesitate for a nanosecond to use universal mail-in ballot to harvest the votes of grannies, convicts, dead people, to defeat the one man who stands between them and their dream of total control of our lives. Now, this is really what I wanted to get to here, because is this above? Like, the people now on the left are saying, well, now it's time to heal. Now that we're in power, it's time to heal, you racist, Nazi, homophobic bigot. You've been a horrible person all this time, and we need to put you on list according to AOC so that we know where you live and you can't continue to be a Trumper. Because how dare you? How dare you? Yeah, I don't put it above them because this is absolutely correct. This is just complete evil nonsense. The fact that Americans put up with this, the fact that Nancy Pelosi is has been in politics for so long that she's still around, that most of these people are still around, is mind-blowing to me. It's because people vote down line. They vote D or R, and they're fools. So here, voter fraud cases emerge in battleground states of North Carolina and Georgia. This was September 9th, 2020. This is from the Daily Signal. You can go through it again. I'm trying to wrap this up, guys, in the next 10 minutes or so. So I'm just going to read these headlines. It says, Town Hall, voter fraud. 1,000 cases of double voting found in Georgia, September 8th, 2020. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was from the primaries. But it doesn't matter, like, if people are voting in person or not. And then you have this stupid story from the Raw story. I had to pull this up. Georgia's Republican Lieutenant Governor undercuts Trump's bogus voter fraud claims in his state. And actually doesn't do that. He just says, my office has been in close communication with the Secretary of State of Office and Attorney General's office and made sure that if any sort of systemic examples of fraud or voter disenfranchisement across the voting base, to let us know. He said, we have not had any sort of credible incidences rise to our level yet. That's all he said. He said, we just haven't seen it yet. But look at this title. Undercuts Trump's bogus voter fraud claim. Well, I don't even think Trump has even brought up Georgia. It's Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. He's not even been that worried about Georgia. And the reason why is because of mail showing up overnight out of nowhere after 8 p.m. But you can't do that, folks. Again, impropriety. 5 states where voter fraud might change presidential elections. This was from Breitbart. And this was October 28th, this was before the election. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Florida. Florida seemed to solve their problem. The American Spectator again. What kind of sore-losing idiot would suspect Democratic voters of voter fraud? And this guy talks about himself. This is actually a really good article. Unfortunately, I spent so much time. I don't want to go over an hour, guys, because that makes for just a way too long video as is. But it says the Democrats probably stole the Richard Nixon 1960 presidential election by fixing just enough votes in Richard Daley's Chicago and Lyndon Johnson's Texas, fabricating them as fast as they could all night long. And you should read this too, because the guy's like, what fool would? Well, I would, and the guy's rather well educated. The Democrats probably stole Richard Nixon. Yeah, the Democrats also stole the U.S. Senate seat held by Republican Norm Coleman in Minnesota in 2008, giving it to Al Franken. That is true. I remember that. Now, Al Franken. I'm so glad he's gone. It says, for the past century, Democrats have been at the center of electoral cheating and thievery. Not all Democrats, obviously. One cannot fairly generalize that broadly. But it goes over a history of election fraud by the Democrats. The Washington Times. October 17, 2016. 2016, folks. Right before the 2016 election. Talking about voter fraud again. 10 examples. Dead people in Colorado. Some Pennsylvania citizens. Voting twice. Voting rigging triggers probe in Texas. Indiana voter fraud investigated grows to 56 counties. 56 counties. 300 investigation in Oklahoma. Election fraud in Kentucky. Look, what is this? Here, the Heritage Foundation, which apparently has they have the list. They have the list of the voter frauds. Proven instances. Well, that's not a ton. But in what time frame, really? It tells you, just choose a state. Well, let's go to Pennsylvania. One convicted case in Pennsylvania. Oh, 2 convicted cases. Well, let's keep going. 2016, 2009. And what we can probably see more than anything from this is no one convicted voter fraud until recently. I mean, that's the reality, folks. When you're saying it doesn't happen a lot, here from the Daily Signal again, database swells to the number I just read you. This was May of this year, 2020. From a Powerline blog, massive voter fraud in Wisconsin. This was the night after the election. Talks about unlikelihood there were 3 million some odd registered voters in Wisconsin going into the election. The total record in Wisconsin would give it an 88% turnout. So we can go back to the BBC article about those numbers. Where's that at? Yeah. Anywhere having 90% turnout. I'm not saying this is evidence, folks. I'm saying this warrants investigation, and saying that there is no impropriety, no fraud, no nothing, and no evidence is you being a dishonest person. You're willfully trying to mislead folks. From the Federalist, this, if I'm not mistaken, was an older article as well. October 13th, 2016. And this is voter fraud is real. Here is the proof. Here's an article from Newsweek that Newt Gingrich wrote just recently here. It says on 6/7, says voter fraud is real. Here's how Democrats want to steal the 2020 election. This was kind of a big deal when it came out. And then here you have CNN talk about the Supreme Court has 3 Bush v. Gore alum, and they do. Why Bush v. Gore it still matters. This is from ProPublica, if you want to read this, but it does matter because of everything that's turned out. Amy Coney Barrett was on that case, as well as Kavanaugh and Judge Roberts. Now, Chief Justice Roberts tends to vote left, so that doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is they all worked on that case, and when they get into arguing over it, it's going to be a thing. Voter fraud is a right-wing fiction. Republicans claim voting by mail will lead to fraud, but Montana federal judge groundbreaking ruling says that's a bogus argument. What? So his ruling says it's bogus? October 9, 2020. Lawyers for President Trump's re-election campaign and the Republican Party are pulling out all the stops to make it hard to vote this fall. No, they weren't. They just wanted you to vote in person. Everyone was out in the streets celebrating, supposedly, the supposed win, that is, of Biden. And they couldn't go out and vote in person? Come on. We had peaceful riots for months, and they couldn't go out and vote in person. It's just silly. You go to the grocery store, folks. Fortunately for these legal humbugs, the facts keep catching up with them. That's what has happened in Montana, where this week ballots were being mailed to hundreds of thousands of registered voters after a federal judge issued a groundbreaking decision that GOP voters' fraud storyline is fiction. That's not just one jurist opinion. On Thursday, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a last-minute appeal by Republican lawyers to reverse it. I don't think that he said it was fiction. The court's decision is the first in the country that followed a full trial on efforts to undermine the mail-in ballots. Notes Office of Montana Governor Steve Bullock. The court rejected all of the claims against Montana's early voting and mail-in ballots opinions. Interesting. Except for voter fraud exists, folks. And again, it's about catching it. It's about seeing it. Let's see, this is from Time Magazine. How Republicans are selling the myth of rampant voter fraud. And this was October 2020. See, they knew this was going to happen. There's no need for this kind of strategy if you didn't have 140,000 votes show up overnight in the middle of the night. Like, there's no need to go and say, well, there's impropriety. There's no need to suggest impropriety when you have observers, poll watchers, watching. Like, if you just let them observe the vote, no problem, right? But you didn't. Verified signatures. If you verified the signature, then there's no need. But you won't. And that's where the problem lies. And that's why Bush v. Gore will win this. I could be wrong because it will be left up to the court, and courts, I mean, they're human beings. The judges are human beings. They make up decisions like human beings do, mostly emotional and not logical. And the judge that made that ruling, yeah, he's probably a left-wing judge. I don't know. I did want to bring this up, though. Oh, Joe Biden. Now, this was a misstatement by him, by no doubt, but still. Is it really? Was it telling? Does he know something? Did he know something and his little demented brain, his Alzheimer's brain, let it out? So the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in American history. Now, I'm sure you all saw that. That was funny. But look, guys, Bloomberg put out the idea of the Red Mirage. They had strategic war games talking about how they would have to secede if Trump won and everything else. These people are nuts. They just want power. They've done nothing but try to destroy Trump's presidency from the beginning. And not in any good way, not by any real legal good means, not by, having good laws presented or candidates that are better. No. Just obstruction. Just obstruction in every way, shape, or form. Impeachment over nothing, literally nothing. There was nothing, Trump did nothing illegal. You can't impeach the president that way, but they did because they can vote on it. And all of it just to destroy any bit of gain by Trump And really, the reality is here, folks, is that business as usual for them is what they want to go back to. And that is being complete crooks, screwing you over, the globalist agenda. You know, Trump didn't play along with their globalist agenda as well as they would like with COVID. And I always, when I criticize Trump with COVID, I criticize him because he encouraged too much lockdown, in my opinion, and should have been more, hey, everybody keep calm. We're going to stay calm in this. We're going to get through this. I'm going to suggest that for a couple weeks we do this, but, you know, I don't want anyone going heavy-handed or overboard. And, you know, he didn't do a good job with it, in my opinion. But it is what it is. So with that, guys, I'll leave it there. Hey, if you want to check out a live show tomorrow night, Wednesday night, every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, we go live on DLive, TheEnds_justify_memes. You can watch replays here over on the Ends Justify Memes on YouTube. I do have a subscribe star, AllMinucOne, if you would like to help me out in any way. And that's pretty much it, guys. Just some things to think about. There are all kinds of videos about this. I need to make one, though. I'm not here to cover current events all the time. I'm here to talk about making our society stronger. That's really what I want to approach things as, having a strong people, a strong society, strong-minded physically as well as spiritually. And we can't do that unless we can trust our elections. And I already don't trust the government at all. What does it mean if they let Biden win this? Now, if we go to court, they throw stuff out and Biden still wins, then okay, I'm good. I still think that they probably fooled and cheated a lot of stuff. I think that the only way they could get people to go in and vote is that mail-in ballot. But let's make no mistakes about it, people. There is plenty of evidence, and plenty of evidence of impropriety, of fraud, of just bad stuff all around. And honestly, hell, I don't know where there's any precedent for it, but I'm all about having a revote. Let's just make everyone go and revote. Just do it right away. Has to be in person. But that's probably not what's going to happen. This is going to be a court matter. And I think December 14th or just before then will be when we figure this all out. So with all that, folks, this has been AllMinucOne. Please like, share, subscribe, and I wish you all well.